Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. Today I am reviewing the M4 MacBook Air. I cannot believe it's been a year since I reviewed the M3, and I cannot wait to get this thing out of the box and check it out. This thing is incredible with 32 gigs of RAM, a 10-core CPU, a 10-core GPU, and that memory is unified. So that's right, this thing is built for AI. So let's get this thing out of the box and let's see what it can really do. All right, so let's get this thing out of the box. I'm pretty sure it's exactly the same as it was last year, but we'll go ahead because I love Apple's packaging, as I've stated. So we will go ahead and pull off these tabs here. I love that sound. That is an awesome sound. So let's go ahead. Let's get this open. I went ahead and grabbed the new sky blue color, and I cannot wait to see what that looks like. I grabbed last year's new color and checked that out. So here we are. This is the all new M4 MacBook Air in sky blue, and it is gorgeous. Look at that thing. That is a gorgeous looking computer. It is kind of silverish looking, which is really cool. So that, I love the new color. Also, let's see, it looks like they've upped the fingerprint resistance. Last year's model, they said they added that new coating. And this year, it looks like it's even better than it was last year. Last year, I still had to polish out a decent amount of fingerprints. There's still some over here, but it definitely looks like they wipe away a lot nicer than last year. So actually, I'll set this over here. So we've got in the box, we've got our regular manuals, and of course, no stickers because Apple doesn't like us anymore. And I went ahead and grabbed the 70-watt power brick this time around to charge faster. And then, of course, there is our braided Magsafe cable. And that is all that is in the box. So let's go ahead, let's open this up for the first time. We'll get that awesome, dong sound. I love the new Mac sound when you open it up. And here we go. There it is. I love that sound. Every time I hear that sound, it's like, it's magical. But yeah, there we are. All right, we're at the welcome screen here, and it wants us to set it up. So I will get this thing set up. I will get some local LLMs running on it because Apple has stepped back their AI, Apple Intelligence, and it was supposed to drop this year, and now it's looking like it may be next year. So definitely very cool that they gave us at least more RAM to work with, and it's unified, so we get a lot more of that power and more larger models that we can run. So I will go ahead, I will get that stuff set up, and I will check this thing out and see if it can do everything that Apple says it can do. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna get some local models installed here. We'll see how far we can push this thing. Go ahead and put some DeepSeek R1 on here, maybe test some image generation like I did in my Mac Mini. That thing handled image generation like a champ, so I cannot wait to see what this thing can do. To note, this is the M4 15-inch. I've got the 32 gigs of unified memory. I have the 10-core CPU, 10-core GPU model, so this thing is spec'd out. The reason I'm doing that is because I want to see, is this a developer's machine? Could I develop on this machine? Could I run local AI models? Could I do the stuff that I need to do? And I may even go ahead and throw in some extra cred in here and throw a couple streams of 8K and just see how much it could process. I'll throw a DaVinci on here and see what it can render and if it does really good at that, because this is the M4 chip, and the M4 series and family of chips can do amazing things. But Apple dropped the price on this. They've gone down $100 from the base model. So from, what is that, $1099 down to $999. And then they went up from the $11.99 to the $10.99. So that is really, really cool. We've got a reduction in price, which makes this a very, very affordable computer for a student, for possibly a programmer, for anyone looking to dabble in AI models or do any kind of light video editing and stuff like that. So I will get that stuff installed and we will check this thing out. All right, and we've got our regular headphone jack right up here. We've also got on the other side these dual Thunderbolt 4 ports and our Magsafe port. These two ports are going to allow you to connect up to 2 external monitors with the lid open. So that is definitely a cool feature, and I'm glad that they have finally given us that ability. It was one of the complaints from the older model, and they gave it to us. Thank you, Apple. We appreciate when you listen to our comments and our feedback and you improve and give us the things that we ask for. But yeah, you've also got Wi-Fi 6E in this thing, so you're gonna get a little bit faster connection there. Not at 7 yet, wish it was 7, but you know, at least they're giving us an upgrade. You've also got the stage camera, so you've got the ability to do the desk view and also the center stage, where it's going to follow you and track you around the screen. And so that is really, really cool. And I believe it is an upgraded 12 megapixel camera from last year. If I'm wrong, I'll throw it up at the bottom, but I do believe it is an upgrade. So that is really cool that they included that. All right, so if you've got an Intel MacBook Air, it may be time to upgrade. The new M4 is supposed to be 23 times faster than the Intel Macs. You're also 2 times faster than an M1 MacBook Air. And so I don't know if it's really worth upgrading there, but if you're on an Intel, anything, MacBook Air, MacBook Pro, doesn't matter. It is time to upgrade and I think move into the M series chips, because they are just putting down some amazing specs and horsepower out of these machines. Top that off with, you've also got an 18-hour battery life. So, I mean, this thing is a workhorse. It's gonna last you all day. And honestly, for the price point, it's really a good price for what you get out of this machine. Now, this is a spec'd out machine, so this is a little bit pricier, but it's definitely, if you want to get entry level into it, you've got the new, they've upped it to 16 gigs of RAM instead of 8. 8 was just terrible. Honestly, we're at the point now with AI and everything that we should bump up to 32, even I think 64. That's my personal opinion. But at least we're at 32 gigs of RAM internal storage, so that is a bump from last year's model, at least upgradability wise. So I'm really happy to see that in this MacBook. All right, so I've spent the last couple weeks with the MacBook Air M4, and I have to say, it is one of my favorite computers still. I love the M3, and the M4 is not any different. It's a great computer. I love its weight. I love its size. I love that it has the ability to run with dual 4K monitors, you know, with the lid open, so it gives me that feature. It really, honestly, everything about this computer I really, really like. And so I wanted to test out over the last couple weeks, like what it can do. So I ran it through its paces a little bit. I tested it out with some video editing stuff. So I went ahead and downloaded DaVinci, and I got that installed, and I wanted to test it out with some 8K footage. So I did a really quick, short, like 12-second clip in DaVinci, and I ran it through on both a 1080p timeline so that I could play through really smoothly. That ran really good. I then bumped that up to a 4K timeline, and that ran really, really well. If you bump it up to an 8K timeline, it does not run, it chops, it lags really, really bad. So I do not recommend doing that. But I can put my 8K footage on the 1080p timeline, and then where you start seeing the degradation and and the lack of power in the MacBook Air is when you start adding effects and stuff. And that I know from even my M2 Pro Max, that the more effects you add, the more stuff you've got going on, the more it starts to you notice it when it's trying to when you're scrubbing the timeline. So I went ahead and did that, and then I exported both in a 1080p timeline with a 4K. Then I exported with a 1080p timeline and then output that in 8K in the render queue, and that exported in about 2 minutes, which was not bad, I have to say. And then I went ahead and reran that again, but this time I ran it with an 8K timeline and exported in 8K, obviously, just to see what it would do. And that exported in just about 6 and 7 minutes. So basically 6 to 7 minutes. I noticed it was right there at that time, and it looks like 6:57 here. So that's right at that 7 minute mark. And then you'll notice here, one thing I do recommend if you are going to be doing any kind of serious video editing with this computer, definitely splurge, get that 32 gigs of RAM, because I re-exported again just to see what it did to the RAM. And you will notice here that I'm seeing 29 gigs. I popped up to 30, 28 gigs of RAM. I mean, it definitely was using all of that RAM, and I highly recommend, that you have that extra RAM. And you'll notice here too that that was 8.5 minutes. So again, that was a minute and a half more exporting in that, 4K timeline, or sorry, 8K timeline there. So that was what I did with video editing. I then went ahead and I wanted to check out some gaming. So I pulled Steam down and I went ahead and put some 7 days on here, and I fired that up. I ran that in low settings in potato mode. That ran really great. Honestly, I was surprised. Now this isn't a super, AAA title, but honestly, for low settings, really low settings, it ran good, and for this computer. And then I went ahead and I bumped that up from there, and I went up to ultra settings just to go, both ends of the spectrum, and that chugged a little bit. I noticed a lot of frame rating, but it's ultra. So I then removed motion blur, and I went ahead and dropped my resolution down to 2560 by 1080, so got that 21:9 aspect ratio, and that smoothed things up a lot more and was playable. And then as soon as I did that, I went ahead, I wanted to see, can I go up just a little bit? So I went ahead and went up to that 2560 by 1440, so got that 16:9 aspect ratio, and that too ran really, really well. And you can see here that, for the trees, the grass, everything looks a lot better than it did in potato mode in low. So you can run it in both. Now there's not a lot going on, so the more stuff you render on the screen, probably the more chuggy that's going to get. And I definitely would recommend probably low settings, because that's going to allow you a lot more flexibility with stuff going on the screen. But you can game on this computer, and that is really, really cool. And then to my favorite thing that I love doing with Apple computers, I love testing local AI models. I went ahead and I downloaded my favorite apps, so LM Studio and Jan AI. Both of those are really, really good. The one I mainly used here was LM Studio, just because they give you a little bit more customization and a little bit more freedom with the app, and I do like that. So I downloaded a couple different models. So I downloaded the DeepSeek version 2 Instruct Coder model, and that is a Q3KL model. So that's a large quantized model. That's a big model. I did not expect this to work. That is a 160 by 14 billion parameter. I figured this would tank, and it did. I tried to load it up multiple times and complete system crash. I had to force reload the computer. It just would not come back, and so definitely could not do that. And then I went ahead and I loaded up the DeepSeek Coder V2 Lite Instruct, the 4-bit. That one doesn't say, when I downloaded it, it didn't tell me what its parameters were, so I can't really help you there. Sorry about that. But I did tweak like the GPU offload settings and the CPU thread pool size, stuff like that. So I went ahead and tested that out, not knowing the parameters, so I don't know exactly what it is, but it's 4-bit. I'm assuming it's a fairly small model. And I messed around with the tokens a little bit, raised them up just a little bit to see what I could get out of it. And I had it write me a function here to output prime number from 0 to 100, and it did a really good job. That was 57 tokens per second, which is not terrible for this computer. And then I went ahead and tested out a few more models here. I had pulled down Llama 3.370 billion parameter, which is the quantized version of the really big Llama version, which is the 401 billion parameter one. And that is, again, a Q3KL model. And that as well would not load, and I had to force reload the Mac because it continually crashed the entire computer and locked it up entirely. So that did not work. I think that if it was I'll say a Q3KM model or whatever, or KS model, the small might have worked, but again, you're not going to get a lot of tokens out of that. So I went ahead and I lowered it down. I was like, all right, 70 billion doesn't work. Let's check out DeepSeek R1 Distilled Quinn. So that was a 32 billion parameter model, and that was a Q8 Didn't give me anything else. It's a quantized model, but it didn't give me any of like the parameter, I mean the whatever, whether it was a large or medium, but that did not work. So I then dropped it down to the 14 billion, DeepSeek R1 14 billion, and that ran okay. I tweaked the settings a lot here and there with the GPU offload, tokens, stuff like that, tried to lower the tokens, and I could not get a really good rate out of it. The only thing I could get was about 8 to 9 tokens a second out of that. So definitely at 14 billion you start, it's loadable, but it's not going to give a whole lot of output super fast. So just keep that in mind. And again, this is the 32 gig model of the MacBook Air. So just that's something to keep in mind. So I went ahead and downloaded Gemma 3, the 27 billion parameter model, and that did load. I was surprised. Again, I had to tweak the settings a little bit and get that done. That was a Q4KM model, so that was a medium model, and that did load, but I only got about 4 tokens a second out of that, so definitely not something that I would recommend using, on a day-to-day basis if you have any kind of speed needs. If you want to test it out and use it, you can, but it's not going to get you anything amazing. So that was kind of my AI local testing that I did on this. Honestly, still kind of in the line with the M3. I'm not noticing a whole lot more performance out of the M4 than I did the M3. I believe in the M3 video I did, it was about a 14 billion parameter model. I think maybe a 32 billion, but it was a small model that I was using at that time, a small quantized model, so it wasn't really, super big. And again, it wasn't giving a lot of tokens a second. So just keep that in mind. You need to stay around probably 14 billion and below with this computer, but it can run local AI models, and that is just super cool. So then after that, I went ahead and I tested out local image generation on the MacBook Air. And honestly, I did not expect this to work. It's the MacBook Air. It's like, it's not really made for this stuff, but at every turn in this, in my time with the MacBook Air, it continued to kind of surprise me as what it is capable of in its form factor and what it comes, loaded with. So I went ahead and downloaded my 2 favorite systems that I use. So I love Diffusionbee. It is one of my all-time favorite image generation models, and I also love DrawThings. Both respectively do different things and the same thing, but if you're looking for something a little bit easier to use, definitely use Diffusionbee. It's a little bit easier to use than DrawThings, but DrawThings is an app you can get in the App Store, whereas Diffusionbee, you've got to download a specific model to get Flux running, and that is the 2.5.3 model. And I'll throw a link to that down in the description so that you can pick it up if you want to and test it out. But I did download Flux Snell. So you have basically 2 models with Flux. You have the Snell version, or Snell, or however you say it, and you have, or Skell. You have that, and you have the dev version. So the Snell version is going to be like a lighter version. It's going to lose a little quality, but it's going to run faster. So for something like a MacBook Air, I went ahead and I used that. I did not use the dev model here. But what surprised me was that when you load it up, I did an image of a cat playing a piano, and it only took like a minute to generate. Now, not a super huge image, mind you, but it only took about a minute to generate it. And I mean, look at this. That cat, that is a pretty good looking image of a cat on a piano. And I did use the photographic style, so that's the other thing about Diffusionbee. You can use like neon punk here, like you can see, origami. I mean, you can use all these different photo styles and generate whatever image you're interested in and do that. So I then wanted to test out one other thing, because it's something that AIs kind of get bad, image generation AIs anyway, and that was a person. So I gave it the prompt, a woman walking down the street, smiling and waving at cars passing by. And here, as you can see, it took, again, only about a minute to generate, and it did really good for its, for this model, I'll say. And yeah, the hand is a little weird. It's got kind of this weird finger thing, but she doesn't have 7 fingers. Her eyes are in generally the right spot. They look honestly right. She's smiling. Why she's in front of the car, I don't know. But, you know, it's a lot better than past stuff. And the fact that you can do that, this is a lot better than Image Playground, where you can do realistic looking stuff. So that is something to keep in mind. If you are interested in a MacBook Air and you want to do image generation, you can do it. And it works really pretty well. And I was surprised. Now, another app that I have been testing out and I am really, really coming to love is ComfiUi. Now, I don't know if you know anything about ComfiUi. It is a really in-depth program. It's also super simple to use at the same time. So it's kind of like that. You can go as deep as you want, or you can stay as shallow as you want. It's kind of that gradient, if you will. But this allows you to do both image generation and video generation. So I went ahead and I tested out some image generation with it. I use CivitAI, so that is a really cool site. I highly recommend it. You can go over to CivitAI, you can pick your models. Now you'll have like all your LoRa's and your checkpoints and different workflow files and stuff like that. But if you look for the files in the models that don't have any, so when you're looking for image stuff, it won't have a little like paintbrush next to it. It will just have like a person or something, and it will say, you know, like realistic, in this case, Vision 6.0. You click on that and you download the model. You may have to make an account, but it is free. And you pull that down. Now you do need to go into your app directory and you need to put that into models and then into checkpoints and then reload your page, because this is running like a local server on 127. So that's kind of how this works. Now, you can also download the app. So ComfiUi has an app, and I'll throw that in the description as well, that you can download, and it kind of handles all of that, you know, in the weeds. You're doing, you know, your different dependencies and stuff like that. It does all of that for you. It installs it, and then it does the same thing. It runs it just inside of its own window, so it doesn't use your web browser. So depending on how you want to run it, there's kind of two options there. You can pull the repo, or you can run the app, but either way works. But what I was surprised about is I gave it, you know, a beautiful scenery here, nature glass bottle landscape, you know, and I'm not going to get too into the weeds here with all of this other stuff. There's lots of really great videos out there that get into the weeds here, and if you want me to do a video, I could, but definitely something that I don't think this video is for. But I went ahead, I said, you know, generate the image, and again, in a couple minutes, not that much. Now, that's only a 512 by 512, so not super high resolution. It spit out an image, and I gotta say, it did a fairly good job. I mean, that bottle looks really good. The image looks really good. And then, as you can see here, you can go over to Browse Templates. So you have all of these different things you can do. So you have flux, you know, control net, upscaling, video. You have so many things, and inside of each one of those categories is different things you can do. So I then did test out a man walking. This particular model did not do very well on faces, as you can see here. I then asked it to do a portrait of a woman in a portrait style, and it did okay, as you can see here. Now, it chose the style, but whatever, it worked. But again, this is just testing, and the fact that you can do this within a few minutes on a MacBook Air is nuts, and it does really pretty well. Now, I did test out video generation. I do not recommend doing that on a MacBook Air. For the testing, it took me about an hour and a half to run WAN 2.1 1.3 billion parameter model on this MacBook Air. Now, in this particular test here that I'm actively loading and showing you, all I got was an output of a green screen at the end. That is the default prompt in there, you know, the fox running through the woods, whatever, that WAN will just auto-populate in ComfiUi. But what I noticed was I changed that, and I'll throw that up right here. I did do a lion walking through the snow or something. I forgot the exact prompt, but as you can see here, like, it's not a great video, but it did render it. But again, it took like an hour and a half to render it. So definitely, if you're doing video generation on the MacBook Air, you're going to be waiting a lot, in a whole minute. I don't recommend it, but it is doable. And that was kind of my test. Can you do that on something with this kind of horsepower, right? Like, so with these specs, can you do that? And so that was kind of like everything that I tested on here. So yeah, that is my review of the MacBook Air M4. with 32 gigs of RAM and the 512 gig hard drive, 15-inch display. I am really impressed with the MacBook Air. I love this computer. I love how thin it is. I love that I can use multiple displays now with it. And I love how light it is. It's, you know, it's an Air, but man, it's so nice compared to carrying around my clunky, you know, MacBook Pro, you know, 16-inch. It's so much difference. I mean, it's insane. But if you are someone who is in the market for a new MacBook, I definitely recommend the M4 Air. If you are a student, if you are a, you know, beginning software engineer, if you are, you know, a video editor, if you are someone who wants to get into local AI models, this computer does all of that and then some. So definitely look at this computer. It's $100 cheaper this year than it was last year. So that is really cool. Things don't usually go down, they go up, as we all know. And so really cool that Apple lowered the price on this. Definitely the time to upgrade if you are someone coming from an Intel MacBook Air, even maybe an M1. M2 or M3, definitely M3 I would not upgrade. If you are someone with an M3, especially if you have the 24 gig model, there's no reason to go up to this. I do not see enough of a difference from 24 gigs of RAM to 32 gigs of RAM to make it worth upgrading unless you just either have to A, have the newest thing, or B, you have to have, you know, that extra RAM to do whatever you're doing. But yeah, that has been my review of the MacBook Air M4. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, comment, subscribe, share, and we will see you in the next video.